right. So as we are diving into this conversation once again, welcome to our conversation today. My name is Luxetiadara. I am your host today. I am a professional certified coach and also a parenting and child development specialist at Ignite Global, and also the creator of the world's first ever ICF accredited coach education specialization encompassing child, adolescent development, and parenting. So today we have a relevant topic that we are addressing in celebration of International Coaching Week. So without further ado, let us dive into our discussion today. So allow me to share my presentation. So as I said, while I'm presenting, I do not see any of you. I will have my screen pinned to the video so that we can make a good recording for those who are joining, watching us later. All right. All right. So welcome back again, Ignite Global. We are a coach education specialization provider, fully accredited by International Coaching Federation. So as we're diving into this session, I would like to wish all of you happy International Coaching Week. I hope that you are continuing to create meaningful transformation in your clients' lives. Right. So today we are looking at a very specific topic through the lens of coach education specialization encompassing child, adolescent development and parenting. Now, this is a very interesting niche where there is a lot of demand, at the same time, a lot of confusion for many coaches who are stepping into this field of coaching. So as you know, that this is the time that coaching as a profession is evolving, and also coaching as science evolving. So we are contributing to the evolution of coaching science and profession by extending coaching science, applying coaching science into child, adolescent development and parenting. So all right. So as we are diving into our discussion, today we will be looking into the introduction to a specialized coach approach to holistic child, adolescent development and parenting. So specifically today, we will see the distinguishes between operating as a generalist versus a specialist. So we will address our traditional coaching models enough to coach children, adolescents, and families, given the specific and complex needs that they come with. So please know that this session also offers you 1.5 ICF CCE units. And towards the end of this session, I will share the link with you. So stay tuned. All right. So as we are diving into this discussion, professional coaches, educators, or practitioners, I invite you to take a minute here. So this is a space for us to interact. I know most of you who registered for this event are professional coaches. So I invite you to, at this point, take some time to think about what are the distinguishes between typical coaching, as in coaching adults, and coaching adults in the sense individuals. I'm not looking at group and team coaching competency because it's altogether a different realm, right? So let's stick to individual coaching. Take a step back and take some notes if you would like. What are the differences between, as of you think on top of your head, typical coaching and specialized child, adolescent development and parenting coaching? What are the differences? So let's take about 2 minutes, and then I will invite 3 of you to share I would like to hear from all of you at the same time. We have limited time, so I would like to hear from 3 of you. Let's remember that as professional coaches, we are stepping into this space with intention. So I invite you to share your insights within 60 seconds, a minute. As professional coaches, we know how to speak directly and precisely. So let's take about 2 minutes. And if you do not want to speak up, feel free to share your insights in the chat box. That's also fine. I was initially going to ask you to join breakout rooms, but I think this way we can maximize time better. So if you have any insights that you think of the differences between coaching adults and coaching children, adolescents, parents, and families, what are the differences? I know some of you are youth coaches, kids life coaches. So I would love to hear from you if you have any insights in the room.
Maybe can I share?
Absolutely, Joe. I did not invite you to share just because you had your camera on. I didn't want to put you on spot,
No
but
worries.
just please go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so my focus is on boys and young men. So as a mental coach, so my view is that when we work with traditional adult clients through coaching, we really just have to focus on the modality and the coaching in the moment, what the client brings to the session. And then we co-create the goal, we go through the process and evoke the changes, the awareness and insights, and then off they go, right? And we support them. Whereas for children and youth, as we are working with them, we need to have that view and understanding that they are still in a developmental stage. So as coaches, we need to have that additional training in terms of youth development frameworks, human development theories, to bear in mind that we are actually working with young people that is still on the way to being a adult. So there's a lot of space and opportunity that they may not know enough in that sense. Not saying that they don't know anything, but it's more of we need to be a little bit more sensitive, nurturing, and as well as we might bring in certain issues that because of the power imbalance, they may not really necessarily voice out. So we do have to be mindful of some of these dynamics at play and be very sensitive of our position with them. So yeah.
Thank you, Joe, for comprehending all those important aspects into your very precise answer. And I feel that your answer is almost like a nutshell of the entire presentation. And I'm going to, of course, elaborate each of these sections that you tap into. But that's exactly, I think, that's a really good foundation that you provided us to begin with. So you tap into few crucial aspects, as I said, especially the developmental stages, and that understanding they are still literally their brain is developing, it's ongoing, and then our interaction has a direct influence in how we mold that brain into adulthood. So that's a very important point. And also, I think what highlighted me the most also from your sharing is that when you said being in the moment with our clients, it's true when it comes to adults, but being in the moment with children minus youth, I mean, we know that it's going to require a different level of presence, because right now we are going to look at some of the challenges that mentees face. We will go one by one, and I think we will tap into some of these things that we are discussing already. Is that most coaches I have seen get caught up in doing a lot with minors, models, and all these frameworks that try to fit into, without realizing that every child's development is so unique that we cannot put it into a cookie cutter approach. And this is also what that our traditional education system is lacking. Like, for example, if we think about a fish and a monkey, we put them together and expect them to climb a tree and then decide who is more capable and who is more intelligent, right? So we can't do that with children. So this is why that having the understanding of being in the present moment is not just being in the situationally present moment, also being in the present moment at the stage, the developmental stage where they are. So, all right. So thank you, Joe, for providing that foundation. And coaches, if you're professionals, if you have any other insights, as reply the chat box. All right, so let's proceed with our presentation for today.
I'm sorry, you're muted.
Realize. Thank you. Okay. So moving on, let's now that we are addressing the differences between coaching adults and coaching minors and parents and families, which involves many different complex dynamics. Now I would like to bring to your attention some of the common challenges encountered by mentees, and some of these challenges are discussed within our mentoring group by some of our CADP graduates, as well as those who are not trained with us, but they still do have experience and skill to work with children and adolescents. Still, these are some of the challenges that discussed in some of our mentoring sessions. So I have heard some of our mentees say, every time child starts to open up, the parent jumps in and takes over the conversation. It's frustrating to keep the focus on the child. Now, some of you coach youth, some of you coach children, parents, children together, some of you coach only children alone, and some of you just focus on the parents, right? Regardless where you are. So if you look at this situation, this is where a parent and a child come together, and so you try to discuss something with the child, but the parent come and answer on behalf of the child. I have had a situation several months ago. The parent reached out for the consultation because the child was struggling with confidence, especially to speak up in public situations. So when they came into the session, the mother insisted that they come together. So of course they came together, and I was speaking with the child. So I would ask a question, and then I observe interesting pattern from the mom. So either she would repeat the question to the child, or she would explain the question to the child. So when she repeated the question, she would either explain the question to the child, or she would translate the question to their original language, or she would answer the question herself on behalf of the child. And then when I say this child is actually a teenager, he was 14 years old at the time. So I thought interesting that the child is having struggles with communication, confidence in communication in public settings. So I also immediately observed this interesting behavior pattern coming from the parent. So situations like this, what do? We haven't even begun the coaching engagement. And how do I balance these dynamics? And then I'm not sure how to handle it when a minor shares something sensitive that might need to be disclosed to their parent. It feels like a tightrope walk. Now, as minors involved, you know that there is going to be consent to begin with in your contract. So the contracting itself need to be addressed thoroughly, especially looking at the child protection laws and what are those implications when you work with a minor. Like, for example, in some countries, you are not allowed to record coaching sessions or any engagement with children or have any digital content stored in your personal belongings, right? And there are situations that you are literally not allowed to be in the same room with a minor without any assistance, especially in emotional and especially reflective practice. It's when it comes to therapy, it's more strict, but in coaching, you can see that it will be embedded as it will be regulated. So coming back to the point here, why we are discussing confidentiality and consent and agreement is because there will be situations minors share sensitive information and they need to be disclosed to the parent. At the same time, we also don't want to break that trust with the minor, because developing this sense of trust that we are on the same team as them while maintaining that authoritative dynamic in the relationship is challenging more than we think. So how do we balance the two, right? Respecting the trust and the confidentiality, at the same time bringing important information to the parent in the right way. And then the whole SMART goal structure feels too rigid for young clients. They get restless or disengaged when we try to set goals the way I do with adults. Now, we know SMART goals is a very effective way of goal setting. That's why an excellent standard like ICF is using it as their main structure, right? There is no doubt in the efficiency and the effectiveness of SMART goal process, but we are working with developing minds, which means that sometimes their developmental stage is not ready for some of the aspects in SMART goal setting, right? So it's not that we can't set SMART goals with them, but we can't do it exactly the same way. So what is the goal? Let's dive deep into the goal. So what is that you would like to achieve at the end of the session? What would you like to walk away at the end of the session? With children, adolescents, it doesn't work like that. So we need to bring more our creativity. When I work with minors, especially when we set SMART goals, I bring a lot of creativity. I bring in activities that integrate their left and right brain, use different types of activity. They use their senses, use their emotions, body, everything. Because like what we said earlier, it's setting SMART goal is not just about setting SMART goal. We also need to understand, for example, their attention span. Can this child keep this attention for such a long period of time when we set a goal? right? There are so many layers that we need to consider. And then there was this interesting situation where very recently one of my mentees said, I told him, this is a teenage boy, that I understand. So my mentee said, I told him that I understand him. And then all of a sudden, he had an outburst. He was so annoyed. He did not believe me. And he was like, he acted like he couldn't believe me, as in she was insincere. Now, when we look at children's, especially adolescent, cognitive developmental stages and emotional developmental stages, these are very common. For example, hot cognition behavior patterns. There could be many other reasons. I'm not saying this or that, but it could be just one of that. So having that awareness that when we say something like, I understand you, now, although at this age, adolescents are able to logically think, and they are also at their cognitive developmental stage, although they are capable of thinking abstract, they are still egocentric, which means they still in the process of learning to learn other people's perspective. When they are, what it means to be egocentric is they believe that my perspective is the perspective, because they don't see that others also feel and see things from their own perspective. They do get it at this point, but they are still in the process of fully comprehending it. The reason is their prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for our executive functioning, like planning, organizing, logically thinking, all of those important life skills, they are still in the process of developing it. So when we say, I understand you, they think from what they can logically process, they go like, you don't understand me. I mean, think about your adolescent ages. Have you said that? I know I have said that to many adults in my life. I used to get very upset when they say they understand me as an adolescent, because in my mind, I thought they did not understand me. I think, in fact, they didn't. So I don't know about you, but this is something I very often hear from adolescents. So what I'm trying to say is empathy has a different meaning. Even our language like this can be a put off to an adolescent. And then sometimes my mentees say, I'm not sure how to give constructive feedback to a child without making them feel criticized or misunderstood. What works for adults feels too harsh for young clients. Now, in professional coaching, especially ICF framework, we speak precisely, directly. We provide constructive feedback to our client directly. Of course, we use coaching language, we use empathy, we use presence, active listening, all that. But still, sometimes it's the coach's responsibility to tell the harsh truth, not in a judgmental way, not in a problem-solving way, just as a thought partner. That's what it means to be a thought partner, right? Feedback literally is like, when you think about it, a mirror. You don't put makeup. For those who use makeup, you know that you don't wear makeup. I don't know about you. I never wear makeup ever in my life without looking at the mirror, because I don't know what I'm doing. Mirror is what shows me if I have done a good job or if I need to wash my face and redo it, right? So feedback is like that. When it comes to adult, it's that straightforward. Why? Because we are providing feedback to an adult brain, which they can emotionally can regulate, they can logically process, they can comprehend what is coming from you. Now, with an adult also, let's go back to the adult. Also, with adult clients, you are not superior. You are not a consultant. You are not a therapist. You are not above the client. As a professional coach, if we are operating at ICF level, we are equal to clients. We don't hold power position. We don't go telling clients what to do in ICF coaching, right? So we are thought partners with our clients. Now, however, when we work with adolescents, children, we cannot be just thought partners with them. We also need to have the authoritative dynamics, not authoritarian, authoritative dynamics, in a sense that we provide supervision. Why? Because there is a minor under our care. So that means we are a supervision figure in that, whatever the time that you are engaging with the child. right? So when we provide feedback, how this is relevant, all that. So we are coming from that authoritative position. So there is that power gap anyway. Now, when we offer feedback to a child, we need to be very careful of our body language, our tone, what we say. Why? Because whatever we say not just impact the goal that they didn't achieve or what that they were sharing with you, it impacts their self-esteem, guilt, shame, identity, character, the personality development, sense of self. A wrong comment from the wrong person at the wrong time can take a child's life turn 360. Have you heard some of those individuals who are able to overcome their limiting beliefs have said that when I was a child, my educator said, I will never be able to do this and that. I will never be able to be a dancer. I will never be able, some kind of critical comments. Now, this might not be how it was communicated literally through the language of that adult, but that's how that young child received, I am incapable. So if we are not aware of how to communicate, you see, communication language, coach communication is not just asking bunch of questions and speaking directly. It's also child-friendly communication, informed. How do we communicate with the child developing brain in a way that it makes sense? The reason is here, coaches, children, adolescents, because of their developmental needs, and they are in the need of an adult's caregiving for literally to be supported for their developmental stage, psychologically, emotionally, socially, looking at holistically, a child believes whatever comes from that authoritative figure to be true. It's literal for their brain. And this is why most of the time, children at home, especially if they are neglected, without us realizing unintentionally some of the things that we do with children, our harsh comments, some of the labels that we give children as parents unintentionally, it breaks their self-esteem so badly. Sometimes we are grown-ups and we struggle with our sense of self, sense of self-worth. We don't know where it comes from. It feels like a hole in the heart. I feel so low self-esteem. I don't even know why I feel this way. Sometimes we think. And if we really go down deep into it, it goes all the way back to our childhood, because someone said something unintentionally, exactly unintentionally. They were not conscious about what they said. It's really not about what they said. It's about how we say something to a child. So I know that I'm going on a tangent here, but I think, coaches, you understand the value of our words. Our words are so powerful. Please, if you're taking any notes, I hope that this will be the only value that you take away. Truly, words have the power to break us or build us, especially when it comes to the child's sense of self. So our feedback, not in a way that we are going to sugarcoat and we will never correct a child's behavior or what's going on. We will provide constructive feedback, but how do we do it? What is the language, the body language, the communication style? How do we do that? In a way, instead of coming across as a persecutor, another adult in their life telling them, I told you so. How do we see, seems like we have made a mistake. What did we learn from this? What are we going to do about it? And so on, right? And then when the child get upset, I freeze. I know how to handle adult emotions, but kids seems to escalate so quickly, and I don't know how to bring them back down. Now, this is also something that I hear often. When you come to think about it, when you work with adults, you are again working with individuals who are fully in control, at least I assume. Adults in general are full in control and aware of their emotions and able to regulate themselves. At least that's the expectation, right? Not saying that everyone is able to do that. That's a different story, different topic for another day. But that's the expectation as an adult, right? Understandable. Why? Because we are fully grown. I mean, of course, the brain is still developing forever, but still, we are able to, our emotional development, cognitive development is almost completed. So we are able to make sense of what is going on internally and externally. But children do not understand their feelings, their emotions, their senses. They don't understand anything, even in adolescence. We think they look like adults, right? Especially these days, adolescents, they look like adults, but they still have a teenage brain. They still have teenage emotional regulation skills, which is very poor often, because we don't teach children those skills, although they are life skills, right? So we need to remember children are emotionally unaware, and also they do not have the skills to regulate their emotions. And that's why when a child is in our care, our emotional attunement, so coaching presence, we are looking at ICF competency discuss about emotional attunement towards the child. When we look at trust and safety, competency number 4. At the same time, also in competency 5, coaching presence. But emotional attunement, you see, it's a very different story with children and adolescents, because you need to be so attuned to their emotions, because unlike adults, children do not know how to communicate their emotions, what they feel and how they feel and why they feel that way. They don't understand they have no clue. So getting it out of them, out of their system, is entirely up to us. So one of the things I very often ask my mentees, and also recording this session. Oh yeah. Something that I ask, especially in the interview process, if sometimes when we call our candidates before they enroll in our program, one of the questions I ask is, are you someone who enjoy working with children and adolescents, and what is your emotional capacity is like to work with them? Because I want to be very upfront with our candidates. If we do not have that extra strength emotionally to be able to be an emotional container, to hold space for a child that is not yours, that's a difficult task, coaches. I'll be very honest with you. And it's difficult to manage your emotions as well as the child's emotions. Why? Sometimes the child's behavior, their emotions can trigger your unhealed wounds, even your childhood experiences, it can trigger. That is why in parenting, we believe our children are reflection of our childhood. They reflect our unhealed part of our childhood. That's why for many parents, their own children are triggering. So for you, for me, for us as professions, it's exactly the same reality. So our emotional attunement needs to be escalated as well. So I keep focusing on the child's behavior, but I sense there is a deep family dynamic I am not addressing effectively. Now, this is a situation I have very clearly seen with from coaches who work with the child in isolation. So as I said, I have seen some of our professionals work with the child alone as youth coaches or children life coaches, and then some of you work with just parents. So in our CADP specialization, we do not train our professional practitioners to coach with just the child, because we believe the impact that you can create is minimum. The reason is, a child to begin with has no autonomy, no independence. They have no power of decision making. Their life depends on adults. So without the adult involvement, the impact that we can create is very minimal. So we are not looking at developmental transformation. When we just work with a child, we are looking at surface level problem solving approach, right? So this is where I have seen most coaches tell me, I work with the child and I see the problematic behavior, but I think it comes from the family. Now, those who join me tomorrow, we are having I can't wait for this session, the whole child coaching. It's one of my favorite topics. I can talk about this forever. So anyway, I am looking forward to dive deeper into some of these aspects in the tomorrow's session. So if you're joining me, it will make more sense to you. This will be like a part one to the next session tomorrow. So in that session, we will look into the family dynamics and family systems in more details. Right. So, and then sometimes coaches also say, when a child starts talking about something deeply personal, I'm not sure how to handle it without overstepping or turning the session into therapy. Now, you will see, coaches, one of the most beautiful things I love about this profession that I'm in is the connections that I develop with these children. It's so profound because it's like when you become that thought partner to them, you provide that freedom within limits, you provide the authoritative supervision. At the same time, you are also a safe, secure attachment figure in that child's life. They start sharing with you deeply personal, you see, their biggest secrets. They start telling you deeply personal things, their emotions, how they feel, all of that. And when that happens, sometimes it will either take you back to your own childhood experiences, and sometimes you will want to, that your nurturing instinct, that motherly, fatherly instincts that we naturally carry as human beings from the evolutionary process that we are hardwired to, will show up, and we will want to take charge and do things differently, save therapy, all that. So sometimes I hear from mentees, how do I maintain these boundaries? Because I don't know where the limit is. I feel like I get too emotionally attached. I get too involved with the minor clients, especially when they see a specific situation where when they see that the child is truly helpless. So situations like that, coaches. Right. So those are some of the challenges our coaches encounter. So if you have any ideas, any comments to share at this point, please feel free to go ahead and share them in the chat box so that we can have a look. Right. So to maximize our time, I'm going to be proceeding with the presentation. I know I am talking a lot. I usually don't like to do this kind of presentations. I like more interactive approach. At the same time, given that we have limited time, respecting your time, we are going to move forward. All right. So now that we are looking at some of the common challenges that's encountered by professional coaches in child development space. We see. Absolutely. Thank you for your comment. So now let's look at the core ICF competency. So as I mentioned earlier as well, regardless what we do, whatever the models and competencies that we bring, as I said, we are rooted in the ICF core competencies. So when we look at ICF competencies, of course, we are looking at the gold standard, all these 8 competencies that we are practicing our coaching with high excellence standard, right? So all the content, the practice, the science is based on ICF competencies. But at the same time, as you observe some of those challenges, you will see each of these competencies, they are perfect for coaching individuals, adults. At the same time, you realize that these 8 competencies, although they are the gold standard, they are still not enough to coach children and adolescents. This means all these coaching competencies need to be elaborated and modified into meet the developmental needs of the clients and the complex dynamics of their family systems. Right. So now we look at the ICF competency framework, now let's look at the CADP specialized coaching framework. So when we look at CADP framework, we are looking at 5 pillars. So we look at child development, CADP, child adolescent development and parenting coaching is a practice that keeps the child in the center. It's a child-centric approach. For example, there are certain education systems in the world that's known to be the most effective education methodologies in the world in comparison to most common and traditional way of educating. For example, I'm talking about Montessori philosophy. Montessori philosophy is a child-centric education method embraced by world highly. It is actually considered as a prestige education methodology. And it's extremely effective. And in our CADP specialization, we also integrate certain Montessori philosophy, education philosophy into the coaching practice, keeping the child in the center. So as I said, even if you're working with only parents, like for example, in our CADP specialization at level 1, our coaches only learn how to coach parents and the family system only. No child coach practice at level 1 because it's way too complicated to begin with, right? Even then, when the coach practitioner is working with the parent, the child is still the center if the parent is talking about a parenting goal. Here is the reason. Sometimes parents, we come to achieve goals for our family, for our children, and we don't realize some of these goals, aspirations we have come from our own lack, come from our own adversities in our childhood. Sometimes they come from our own unmet needs. For example, when we think about, let's say, a child, when we expect a child to achieve certain profession, right? It's like sometimes a child is raised to hold a certain profession. Like it's expected from that child that they are going to be this professional when they grow up. And if we really go deep down to addressing out of 100 reasons, one could be that it comes from the parent where they wanted that, or they were expected to achieve the same goal from their parents, and now they are passing it to their children. So sometimes we have these unconscious patterns, and that's why coaches, it's important we explore with the parent, why are you achieving this goal for your family, keeping the child in the center. This is very, very crucial. So this is why in our CADP program, we discuss how to help parents develop a vision, go beyond just a discovery session. You know that in ICF professional coaching, one of the very first sessions is the visioning session, where we discuss the bigger picture so that they can decide how many goals and everything else, right? So here we discuss how to help parents develop a panoramic parenting vision in a way that they see the 360 view of their family system when they develop a goal, still child in the center. Number 2, as I said earlier, rooted in the ICF framework. So I'm not going to repeat that again. There is no need to repeat the same information. So next one, child-parent connection. Now, most of us focus so much on doing. It's so fascinating to me when I sometimes mentor my mentees, and the amount of doing that goes into it without realizing, without strengthening the child-parent connection. When we look at child-parent connection, we are not just looking at the child-parent relationship on the surface level. We discussed earlier, we are working, Joe very precisely showed us the brain development, that's one of the distinguish between the two, right? So when we look at that kind of brain development, what we are looking at, even the brain system, what I'm talking about is our attachment system. So if you are familiar with developmental psychology, you may have heard about the attachment theory. There are 4 styles of attachment, and the one that we must promote is the secure attachment. So what we look at child-parent connection is not just, oh, I'm so nice to my child, now we have a really good relationship, I'm a good parent. That's just surface level. What we look at is deep emotional intimacy between the child parent, in a sense where their nervous system is co-regulated, so that the child has a secure attachment to their parent. They have that anchor, secure home, secure base, connection to come back to. So this means regardless whatever the challenge that they are going to face, they are going to be able to come back from them faster, because their brain has developed a secure, healthy attachment style. Now, research shows, coaches, more and more, especially in terms of attachment work, a child who has secure attachment is much higher in performance in every aspect of life compared to a child who has an insecure attachment with their parent. The reason is, when a child has a secure attachment, they are in a regulated, looking at the nervous system. A child is not just a little body, a little somebody, or a little short adult that supposed to, do as we say. They are much more than that. So their nervous system is regulated when they have a secure attachment figure. And this is why in our coaching practice, rather than parents doing this and that and achieving this and that goal, the focus is how healthy is your connection with your child. Haven't you seen individuals in your circle, maybe even yourself, that parents provided them everything? They have these big positions in life, but the very same, those adult children are unable to spend more than a weekend with those parents who did everything for them. And when I talk to them, some of these parents, especially those parents who are working with their inner child, reparenting work, they say that it's true that my parents did everything, provided everything, but there was no real connection. So it's also for us to ask, important to ask parents, bring their attention, how would your child describe you as a parent in 20 years? How would your relationship would be like with your child in 20 years? I mean, some of us even may not even speak to our own parents. Well, at the end of the day, parents are our primary caregiver figures, those who are supposed to provide us unconditional love. So what happened? If that's the case, why some of us are unable to spend more than a weekend with our own parents, right? We need to think bigger when we work with parents and children and adolescents. It's not just helping them go from A to B. They already know how to do that. They don't need a coach for that. They have a bigger problem in their system that they don't see. That's why they come to us. Next. Developmental stages. So we also discussed about this. I'm not going to go back and forth. Also, for those who are joining tomorrow, we will talk about these developmental stages in depth a little bit tomorrow, given the time that we have, if we can manage. And then we also look at family systems, which we will look into a little bit today. So these are the 5 aspects that we combine in CADP specialization. So as you can see, obviously, we are going much bigger and broader than the ICF competency framework. Now, when we look at developmental aspects very briefly, looking at the whole child, as I said, a child is not a short adult that automatically understand what is expected from them. They don't understand what we are expecting from them because their brain doesn't allow them to process information the way adults' brain does. So the questions that we ask sometimes doesn't make sense to them at all, right? So as a professional coach, okay, yes, I think it's going to be hi Manju. Thank you for your message. Sorry to interrupt in the middle. I will come to your question after this sharing. Thank you, Manoj. All right. So we look at the brain development, right? As of course no, it's all right. Please don't be sorry. No problem at all. Brain development, right? We said earlier, literally that brain, that magnificent brain is developing as we are speaking with them. Sometimes when I think about it, it gets me to every time that, oh my God, that everything I say, not in a way that I'm afraid, I'm intimidated by it, but it just grounds me so much. And this is why I think remembering that fact, it makes me feel like that it is, when I interact with my minor client, it is the most sacred space in my day, in my life, at that point of life. Why? Because my interaction to that child has, it defines how that brain is going to be molded. Now, we're going to look at this example later shortly, but just think about it this way. When we look at brain development of the child, a brain surgeon, I tell our students in the training, when we look at the brain development of a child, coaching approach, look at yourself as a brain surgeon. A brain surgeon, so I know that this is not the best content and the visual that I'm providing you, the mental image I'm providing, but let's just look at it from the physical perspective. What would it look like physically, right? Because let's say, when we look at, when we say our wounds, emotional wounds, psychological wounds, we often refer to invisible wounds. Have you heard? Why? Because emotional, mental, psychological wounds are not tangible. We can't see them. But it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Exactly the same thing here as well. The development, what we do, has an impact emotionally, psychologically, mentally, cognitively. It just doesn't see. We don't see it. It doesn't show. Right? So when we look at the brain development, brain surgeon wouldn't cut open that someone's head and just recklessly, impulsively do some moves. How careful this doctor would hold the knives, the blades. How careful they would place their hands, their movements, the way they speak, the way they move, the lighting. Imagine a surgical room where there is a brain surgery is being performed. Imagine the attunement, the attention to details that's going into it. That is the kind attention that we need to provide to a child, because everything that we say, do, has that very same impact. We might not be using knives, but we are using something much sharper, our words, our emotional reactions, responses, right? So that's something that we need to think about. And then we also look at cognitive development, right? On top of the brain development, there is cognitive process that happens. There are different brain parts responsible for different cognitive functions. So we also need to be aware of those developmental stages. We will look into another slide, where we will discuss this one a little bit in depth. And then we also look at the emotional development of the child, social development, and so on. So I am only showing here only different few aspects of the developmental areas. But you see, when we look at the whole child, it's not just one lens that we look at a child through. Our coaching approach need to accommodate all of these developmental aspects. And then on top of developmental areas, there are also developmental needs, right? So we explore aspects. Now we are looking at developmental needs. Now I'm sure all of you have heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, especially as someone who is in the reflective practice, professional, personal development space. This is a common psychological model that we observe. At the same time, I don't think that we actually understand the depth of this theory, this model, and this is why we look at this model through CADP coaching, because without addressing developmental needs, there is no human development to begin with. And you will see most of our dysfunctions in life manifest as addictions, as all of those dysfunctions, when we go deep into the root cause of it, we realize they show up as dysfunctions, addictions, or whatever that is, because of a need that is unmet in our childhood. So this is why coaches, as a professional coach in this area, learning developmental psychology, this is one of the very basic things that we need to learn a child's developmental needs. So we look at psychological basic needs, and most parents, most of us as adults, we just get stuck here. We only focus on the psychological needs, which is food, shelter, clothing, education, all of that. If you notice, organic food, the best schools. I'm not saying this is wrong. It's amazing. But that's not enough. That's just one particular aspect of needs. And then we also have safety needs, that a child needs to feel safe at home, financial safety, physical safety, not just that, also emotional safety, right? Love and belonging needs. A child needs connection. This is where we discussed also earlier, attachment. Is this child growing up in a household which is a safe base, securely attached? And then esteem needs. A child needs, esteem needs to be filled, to be respected, to be acknowledged, to be recognized, all of those things. And then self-actualization needs, for them to achieve goals. So you see, this is where coaching can enhance these needs and so on, right? So now we look at the child development aspects and needs. Now we also understand, when we look at child development and parenting, there is no parenting without a child. And of course, there is no caregiving without a parent. So there is another side to parenting. And we look at two different aspects in parenting, which is parenting education and skill development. Now, I will tell you why these two things are important with a little story. Now, if you know me, if you have been to some of my other sessions and also some of my YouTube videos, I have shared this story a few times. So if you are new, welcome. And if this is your few times hearing, I hope that you will gain a different message this time. So there was a little girl, and she saw her mom cooking a fish, and she saw the mommy cut the head and the tail of the fish. And the little girl, being a little girl, very curious, she asked, "Mommy, why did you cut the head and the tail of the fish? It's the tastiest part that I like to eat." And mommy said, "Oh, that's just how I learned to cook it. And this is how your grandma always cooked this recipe. And I learned from her. Why don't you go ask her?" So the girl was very curious to find out why mommy cut off the very delicious head of the fish. So she went to the grandma and asked the same question. And grandma said, "I don't know. I learned it from my mother, who is your great-grandmother. Go ask her. She will tell you why." So the girl was very surprised. And anyway, she went to, children, they're very curious. They will not stop until they are satisfied with the answer. So they went to the great-grandma, and then she asked the same question, why? And the great-grandma smiled, and she gave her a little hug, and she said, "Oh, darling, it's because back in my time, I only had a very, very small pan, and I couldn't fit the entire fish in that pan. So I had to get rid of the head and the tail. And at the time, I couldn't also afford a bigger pan. So this is the only way that I could make this fish." And just like that. Now, if we forget about the fish, and if we really look at this from a practical perspective, of course, this is an obvious example that I'm sharing with you. But think about it, just like that, 3 generations, we repeated the same pattern, a style, without really seeing why we are doing it. Why? Because nobody really stopped to ask a question, why am I doing what I'm doing? Recently, I had a coaching session with one of my clients, who is a pediatric dentist, and she is having these reactions very often with her child, two children, both under 10 years old. And she said her goal was to understand, why am I behaving the way I behave? I thought, what a profound intention to address. And she talked about it. We had such a deep conversation, and she came out with a lot with that, and she went into her body straight and how much reactivity is stored in her body, in a way that she behaves. So you see, that's what happens when a parent stop to ask, wait a second, something is not right. Why am I behaving the way I behave? Games change. This is what it means to truly break the pattern. Now, why I'm sharing this story with you professionals, the reason is, as we become parents, not very many of us are educated to become a parent. Parenting is a full-time job, 24/7. Once you become a parent, you are a parent for the lifetime. When we are depressed, when we are having a death in the family, when we are having depression, when we are going through a divorce, when the neighbor is giving us a hard time, or the president is going nuts, whatever it is, you are still a parent. You can't take a 5 minutes break from parenting. Oh, today I'm not going to be a parent. It doesn't work like that, right? So most of the time, what we do parenting is something that we are familiar from our parents, something that's been passed down to us by our parents, our society, our circle. So we learn that this is what it means to parent. But we also need to know, yes, we learned a lot of great values and beliefs from those traditions, the previous generations that came before us. But we also need to truly be realistic and address some of these traditions are toxic. Like, for example, I know right now as we are speaking, coaches, some part of the world, physical punishment is normal. Physical abuse, physical punishments, hitting, spanking children at home, at school is normal, socially accepted as normal. It's, oh yeah, you get beaten at the school. That's what happens when you misbehave. But do you know, we will talk about this tomorrow when we look at child abuse, especially ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, a very an eye-opening research conducted by Center for Disease Control, CDC. They identified 10 types of adversities that we experience in our childhood, and not all of them are, the out and loud and grand in a way, oh, this is trauma. Some of them are woven into our families, our day-to-day life, dysfunctional family dynamics. So coming back to what I was saying, physical hitting, physical punishment is categorized as type of child abuse, and it's accepted by psychological associations. It is in our psychological statistics. So still in some part of the world, some of these patterns that's been passed down to us by generations are still accepted. Why? Because we don't take a step back and ask, okay, I was beaten as a child. And does that mean I also have to beat my child to make them good people? Do you know anyone who became a good person by being punished? Discipline, good morals, to be a considerate human being, kindness, compassion? Yes, true. But right? We need to take a step back, and we really need to ask what we are doing with our children. So this is why you will see when you start when you start working with parenting clients, you will see how unaware they are of their parenting style, of their parenting communication, of their own attachment style, and so on. So this is why, as a parenting coach, your awareness in parenting education and skill development is also crucial. So this is what I said, coaches, when we look at a brain surgeon or a pilot, we understand that this is not a job that, anyone can, oh, today I feel like I'm going to become a brain surgeon. Oh, today I think I'm in the mood to become a pilot, right? It doesn't work like that. These professions are something that is highly taken into consideration in terms of education, practice, because it involves high risk take. People's life depends on these. If you look at these pilots, how many people's life depend on these people? And you are exactly like that. Your responsibility is as higher as this, because you are working with an individual whose brain is still molding, and our interactions will have an impact manifesting into their adulthood. And you don't want to be that reason why that child has a block or a limitation. For example, what I'm talking about, I said earlier, some educators, harsh comments, our own family members give us labels that we carry for the rest of our life. So our awareness is crucial. So you see, coaches, when we look at child, adolescent development and family coaching, parenting coaching, we are no longer looking at life coaching. We are looking at developmental coaching, because when you coach life coaching, you're already coaching someone with lots of life experience, and someone has full grown cognitive ability. But with a child, it's not the same. All right, Samar, thank you for joining. It's great to have you. Bye for today. So we are looking at developmental coaching. That is the biggest difference, life coaching versus developmental coaching. And this is why, coaches, we have been saying this over and over. When you work with minors, parents, families, your awareness of developmental psychology, parenting and family science is crucial. Without that, it's not possible for us to be fully present or to fully embody all those profound coaching competencies ICF has provided for us. All right. So now, as we are looking at some of these concepts, now let's look at what is the CADP specialization competency framework is like. What are the inclusions? Now, I can't bring everything that's included in the specialization, because it's a comprehensive program that's offered as level 2 at the moment, but we are working on the level 3 part, which is going to be a combination of trauma-informed aspect, because most of the time we realize, especially parents, when start working with a coach, or especially in this developmental aspect, they realize they have a lot of childhood adversities that they didn't even realize. So most parents, I don't know about other professionals, but in my case, many parents who work with me, not just only coaching aspects, but also as you know, I'm also a parenting and child development specialist. So I offer also other type of parenting and child development work. But even then, I see there is a diversion towards, when they realize that some of their limitations come from their own childhood, they want to work on their inner child work, which means reparenting, which means that they need to go back in time and look at some of those childhood experiences and address that. So because of that, we are extending the program into be a level 3 program, but that's still happening. So this is why I'm not able to bring all of aspects, coaches, but let's look at it from the foundational level. So one of the very first things that we look at is attachment theory. Of course, we do not teach the attachment theory per se, because, I mean, you can understand we can do a PhD on attachment theory just itself, but we take what is necessary for coaching children, adolescents, and parents and families from attachment theory, and we integrate those aspects into the coaching principles. We also look at Piaget's cognitive developmental theory, which is 4 developmental stages, crucial when work with minors. We also look at Erikson's psychosocial developmental theory. At each stage, the child's emotional and social development is different. And even if it's the same family, same age children can have developmental stages different. So need to be very aware of that. And then we look at ecological systems theory, which we will look in just briefly. Right. So as I said, coaches, although we are looking at theory, you may feel like, oh my God, it's a lot of theories, and ICF framework itself is quite complicated. Yes, it is true. So this is why I said I'm not trying to intimidate you or say that it's complicated, but it is complicated. Understanding these psychological aspects, not the entire theory, but how they play a role when you coach a child is important. So then, right. So as we are looking at now ecological systems theory, we understand a child is not just something that can exist in isolation. A child is like a tree with a great root system. Now, if you look at weed, you know that the difference between weed and an oak tree, right? The root system difference. A child is exactly like that. So when we look at ecology, the systems, family systems, one of the things that we look at is ecology of parenting. And this is something that subject that we study thoroughly in our level 1 program, because without looking this ecosystem of the family, there is no child development coaching, because all these layers that we are looking at directly and indirectly influence the child development, right? So this is influenced by Yuri Branner's ecological systems theory, and he identified as an individual, a child has different layers influencing their development. So when we look at the child and the parent as a unit, it doesn't exist in isolation. They are a unit, but part of a bigger system. So we look at 5 different layers. The first layer is the microsystem, where the immediate environment of the child, the child's temperament, the child's personality, the child's developmental stages, their physical development, their mental health, their learning styles, intelligent types, all of that. And then we also look at the parent side, the parenting style, all of that. And then when we look at the microsystem, this also includes immediate family members and friends, peers, school, educators, all of that. So this is the immediate. And then we look at the mesosystem, which is the layer, the second layer, where the immediate systems interact. For example, mom and dad. How do mom and dad interact with each other? Fighting every day and throwing things at each other, or very loving and secure relationship between parents and good communication and good co-parents, right? They know how to be co-parents. It's not like, oh, you do the parenting, I will do providing. It's not like that. And then mesosystem will also be, how do the child's parents and educators involved? How is my involvement with education? And then we look at the exosystem, which is the indirect system that influence the child's development indirectly. For example, the parents' workload, like the parent I talked to you about earlier, the pediatric dentist, and she said during the weekend, she's like a different person compared to the weekdays, very different personalities. And then as we discussed during the session, she said her work is with children involving dental work. Have you ever seen a child who goes to the dentist happy? I mean, you can imagine how stressful that job can be for that parent, right? And she said, I bring all that stress to work, and it's almost like I have no patience or any emotional capacity for my own 2 little children. And you see how the parents' relationship and interact with the child's development because of the parents' work stressful situation, right? So this is an invisible aspect that's playing a role. And then we look at the macro system, which is the broader societal, religious, cultural, government, policy, socioeconomic conditions, all of these things that play a role. For example, the religion of the country, the traditional values, right? The race, how is that playing a role if we are living in a country where racism is a problem? I mean, let's talk about it, coaches, right? These are uncommon, I mean, these are common problems that is not widely, openly spoken, but doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Like, for example, if you look at racism, it is a problem like the pink elephant in the room. Everyone knows it exists, but we don't really look at it because not very many of us can do anything about it. But it does exist. I work with, particularly within just last 4 months, I got 3 times consultations to work with adolescents who migrated from one place to another, and now they are in a different social setting and they are starting to experience racism subtle ways, like jokes, comments being made as jokes in peer groups. But racism is racism. It can dress up as a joke, but it is still what it is, right? So how does that impact? Like, for example, right now in the world, some part of the world, very interesting things happen politically. Governments and world leaders acting in a very interesting ways. How is that impacting the child development? If you look at it, it does impact the development of the child indirectly. And then we look at the change that occurs over time, which is the chronos system. Like, this could be a death of a family member, birth of a family member, a divorce, migration, something like that. Now, if we go back in time just 5 years, COVID happened, right? Drastic change. And you can see COVID impacted all of these 5 layers of the family system, which impacted the child development immediately overnight. It changed. It completely shifted how we approach children's development overnight just by COVID, right? So there are these kind of dynamics that play in parenting. And this is why, coaches, we can't just blindly operate with on the surface level with ICF competencies. So ecology of parenting, these are the aspects that, that we discussed. So this is what I meant when we look at child development and parenting coaching. We can't just operate at the surface level and expect to create transformational changes, especially if we are looking at developmental changes. So this is what I had prepared for you. I actually wanted to share 10 minutes of a coaching session with a real client with consultation, but I don't think we have the time now. That's okay. At the same time, I will host a session in the future. If you are up for it, feel free to join. Absolutely. Thank you, Dorota, for your insights. Thank you. And please wait. Let me share the link with you. CCEU unit link with you so that you can have it. So give me a second, coaches. Thank you. Tomorrow we have exact same time, coaches, and please feel free to reach out to our team and they will let you know the time and the registration. Hold on, I'm going to share with you now. CCEU unit link is here, coaches. And also, I just want to let you know at this point, if you are interested in exploring our specializations, at the moment we have a 22% discount. So if you are interested, have a look and let us know. And also, I'm looking forward to seeing some of you tomorrow session. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. All right, so given we still have a few minutes, I would like to hear from some of you. What are your thoughts and insights if you feel up for sharing? If not, Thank you for joining, and I look forward to seeing you soon again.
Yes, hello. Can I ask a question?
Yes, Alia, please.
I know this program is geared to the regular, child development coaching. Do you work with any children that have like the cancer in the cancer arena that have that it's not just child development, it's also the trauma of having cancer and what they go through. So would that have like, of course, going to have impact on them as a child or as a parent? So how does that program help, if I can say, in that arena?
That's a great question, Alia. And as you can imagine, children who are experiencing something like cancer, they are already going through a traumatic experience. So we need to be very careful with our approach. And this is why I said at the moment, the program is offered at PCC level. So we do not touch base anything on trauma approach, because trauma is something that we need to approach very sensitively. I personally work with trauma-informed topics on children and adolescents, as I do have the qualification set to do that. At the same time, the program CADP specialization itself does not qualify our coaches to work with children experiencing trauma, Alia. Thank you for that question. Sorry, on that note, yes, I am sharing the link for registration links for tomorrow. You can book some of the sessions here. We have, no, sorry, I think I'm sharing the same link. No, it's the wrong link. For tomorrow's session, professionals, if you are interested, I am sharing the link now. You can join the second link and you will be able to join us tomorrow. Manju, yes, we will have the recording of this session ready, and when it's ready for replay, we will share with you. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, Lara, for your interest, and thank you for joining us today. If you don't have any insights, then I would like to thank you all of you.
Hi, Lux. Sorry.
Yes, Manju.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm not a coach at all. Sorry. But I am exploring this ICF to becoming a coach. I'm looking for a life coach, kind of. So is it like yours is different from ICF? Your coaching style?
No, Alia. Sorry, Manju. Like what we were discussing today, our approach is not different. As an ICF accredited coach education provider, we fully adhere to ICF framework because, to be honest, there is no other framework that is as excellent as ICF. It's the gold standard. So we are thoroughly rooted in ICF foundation. We follow the ICF 8 core competency, but we are also open-minded to understand that ICF 8 core competency doesn't cover child development aspect. So this is why on top of ICF competency, we bring in child development, parenting, and family competencies.
Okay, if I want to decide, like if I decided to go for this child parenting coaching, so do I get into directly into Ignite Global, or how do I get into your course?
Oh, thank you, Manju, for that question. If you are curious to explore the question, I don't want to hold anyone else back. I'm happy to provide the answers. And also, I don't want to use this as a
Yeah.
space, but I can offer you quick information. I think the easiest way to get more information about the program is to reach out to my colleague Leah and our team. So
Okay.
that be able to provide the information. And also, Alia, as I said, right now we have a discount. So let me share my colleague Leah's email address so that you can directly reach out to her. And we will also be able to send you some information if you are interested. So here is my colleague Leah's email. Please feel free to reach out to her and she will get in touch with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manji, for the question and also for your interest in exploring potential collaborations with Ignite Global. All right, everyone. In that case, thank you for joining us today and being part of this conversation. I will see you very soon, hopefully tomorrow. Bye for now.